The attainment of enlightenment, mundane right view and supramundane right view. The Sammaditthi Sutta, the discourse on right view, is the 9th sutta of the Majjhima Nikaya, the collection of middle-length discourses. Its expositor is the Venerable Sariputta Thera, the Buddha's chief disciple and the foremost of the Master's bhikkhu disciples in the exercise of the faculty of wisdom. The Buddha declared that next to himself, it was the Venerable Sariputta who excelled in turning the incomparable wheel of the Dhamma, in expounding in depth and in detail the Four Noble Truths realized with the attainment of enlightenment. In the Sammaditthi Sutta, the great disciple bears ample testimony to the Buddha's words of praise, bequeathing upon us a discourse that has served as a primer of Buddhist doctrine for generations of monks in the monasteries of South and Southeast Asia. As its title suggests, the subject of the Sammaditthi Sutta is right view. The analysis of right view undertaken in the sutta brings us to the very core of the Dhamma, since right view constitutes the correct understanding of the central teachings of the Buddha, the teachings which confer upon the Buddha's doctrine its own unique and distinctive stamp. Though the practice of right mindfulness has rightly been extolled as the crest jewel of the Buddha's teaching, it cannot be stressed strongly enough that the practice of mindfulness or any other approach to meditation only becomes an effective instrument of liberation to the extent that it is founded upon and guided by right view. Hence, to confirm the importance of right view, the Buddha places it at the very beginning of the Noble Eightfold Path. Elsewhere in the suttas, the Buddha calls right view the forerunner of the path, Pabangama, which gives direction and efficacy to the other 7 path factors. Right view, as explained in the commentary to the Sammaditthi Sutta, has a variety of aspects, but it might best be considered as twofold. Conceptual right view, which is the intellectual grasp of the principles enunciated in the Buddha's teaching, and experiential right view, which is the wisdom that arises by direct penetration of the teaching. Conceptual right view, also called the right view, in conformity with the truths, Sakkanalomika Sammaditthi, is a correct conceptual understanding of the Dhamma arrived at by study of the Buddha's teachings and deep examination of their meaning. Such understanding, though conceptual rather than experiential, is not dry and sterile. When rooted in faith in the Triple Gem and driven by a keen aspiration to realize the truth embedded in the formulated principles of the Dhamma, it serves as a critical phase in the development of wisdom, panya, for it provides the germ out of which experiential right view gradually evolves. Experiential right view is the penetration of the truth of the teaching in one's own immediate experience. Thus, it is also called right view that penetrates the truths, Sakkappativeda Sammaditthi. This type of right view is aroused by the practice of insight meditation guided by a correct conceptual understanding of the Dhamma. To arrive at direct penetration, one must begin with a correct conceptual grasp of the teaching and transform that grasp from intellectual comprehension to direct perception by cultivating the threefold training in morality, concentration, and wisdom. If conceptual right view can be compared to a hand that grasps the truth by way of concepts, then experiential right view can be compared to an eye, the eye of wisdom that sees directly into the true nature of existence, ordinarily hidden from us by our greed, aversion, and delusion. The discourse on right view is intended to elucidate the principles that are to be comprehended by conceptual right view and penetrated by experiential right view. The Venerable Sariputta expounds these principles under 16 headings: the wholesome and the unwholesome, the 4 nutriments of life, the 4 noble truths, the 12 factors of dependent arising, and the taints as the condition for ignorance. It will be noted that from the second section to the end of the sutta, all the expositions are framed in accordance with the same structure, which reveals the principle of conditionality as the scaffolding for the entire teaching. Each phenomenon to be comprehended by right view is expounded in terms of its individual nature, its arising, its cessation, and the way leading to its cessation. The grasp of this principle thus makes it clear that any entity taken for examination is not an isolated occurrence with its being locked up in itself, but part of a web of conditionally arisen processes that can be terminated by understanding and eliminating the cause that gives it being. The right view arrived at by penetrating any of the 16 subjects expounded in the sutta is discussed in terms of two aspects, both aspects of supramundane penetration. The first is the initial penetration of the supramundane path that transforms a person from a worldling, puthujjana, into a stream enterer, sotapanna, a noble disciple who has entered irreversibly upon the stream to liberation. This aspect of right view is indicated by the words that open each section. 1. Who has perfect confidence in the Dhamma and has arrived at this true Dhamma. These qualities are attributes only of the stream enterer and those of higher attainment along the path. The description thus applies to the trainee, Sekha, the disciple who has entered the path but has not yet reached its end. The words signify right view as a transformative vision which has revealed the ultimate truths underlying our existence, but which must still be developed further to complete the full transformation it is capable of effecting. The second aspect of supramundane right view is indicated by the closing words of each section, from he entirely abandons the underlying tendency to lust, to he here and now makes an end of suffering. This description is fully applicable only to the arahant, the liberated one, and thus indicates that the right view conceptually grasped by the wise worldling and transformed into direct perception with the attainment of stream entry reaches its consummation with the arrival at the teaching's final goal, the attainment of complete emancipation from suffering. The commentary to the discourse on right view. 1. Thus have I heard, the Sammaditthi Sutta. 2. Herein all such questions spoken by the elder as one of right view is said, friends. In what way is a noble disciple one of right view? Or, and what, friends, is the unwholesome? These are questions showing a desire to expound. Herein, since those who know, those who do not know, those outside the dispensation, those within it, those who speak by hearsay, etc., and those who speak by personal knowledge say, one of right view, therefore, taking it as an expression, common, to the many, he touched upon it twice, saying, one of right view is said, friends, Sammaditthi ti avuso, vukati. The intention here is this. Others say, one of right view, and still others say, one of right view. Since that is said, in what way, friends, is a noble disciple one of right view in respect of meaning and characteristic? Herein, one of right view is one possessing a lucid and praiseworthy view, sobhanaya pasataya kaditya samanagato. But when this word right view is used to signify a state, rather than a person endowed with that state, it then means a lucid and praiseworthy view. This right view is twofold, mundane, lokiya, and supramundane, lokutara. Herein, the knowledge of Kama as one's own and knowledge which is in conformity with the Four Noble truths are mundane right view, or in brief, mundane right view is all understanding that is accompanied by the taints. Understanding connected with the noble paths and fruits is supramundane right view. The person possessing right view is of three kinds: the worldling, Puthujjana, the disciple in higher training, Sika, and the one beyond training, Aseka. Herein, the worldling is of two kinds, one outside the dispensation and one within the dispensation. Herein, one outside the dispensation who believes in karma is one of right view on account of the view of karma as one's own, but not on account of that which is in conformity with the truths, because he holds to the view of self. One within the dispensation is of right view on account of both. The disciple in higher training is one of right view on account of fixed right view, the one beyond training on account of the right view that is beyond training. But here, one of right view is intended as one possessing supramundane wholesome right view, which is fixed in destiny and emancipating. Hence he said, whose view is straight, who has perfect confidence in the Dhamma, and has arrived at this true Dhamma, Ujugatasa, Diti Dame Avikapasadena Samanagato, Agato Imam Sadamam. Because of its going straight without deviating to either extreme, or because of its going straight by removing all crookedness such as bodily crookedness, etc. Supramundane right view is straight. One possessing that view also possesses perfect confidence, unshakable confidence, in the ninefold supramundane Dhamma. And by becoming disentangled from all the thickets of wrong views, by abandoning all the defilements, by departing from the round of rebirths, by bringing the practice to its consummation, he is said to have come by the noble path to this true Dhamma, proclaimed by the Enlightened One, that is, Nibbana, the plunge into the deathless. The wholesome and the unwholesome. 3. Understands the unwholesome, akusalan ka pajanati. He understands the unwholesome called the 10 courses of unwholesome karma, action, penetrating this by way of function with the understanding that has nibbana as its object as this is suffering. Understands the root of the unwholesome, akusalamulan ka pajanati. And he understands the unwholesome root which has become the root condition of that unwholesome, penetrating this in the same way as this is the origin of suffering. The same method applies here also in regard to the wholesome and the root of the wholesome. And as it is here, so in all the following sections, the understanding of the subject should be understood by way of function. In that way, Theravada pi, by this much, by this understanding of the unwholesome, etc. He is one of right view, Sammaditthi hoti. He possesses supramundane right view of the kind aforesaid, whose view is straight and has arrived at this true Dhamma. At this point, the summary version of the teaching has been expounded, and this part of the teaching itself was brief, but for those bhikkhus, it should be understood that the penetration of the meaning through right attention occurred in detail. But in the second section, section 4, it should be understood that the teaching too, as well as the penetration through attention, is stated in detail. Herein, the bhikkhus at the council at the great monastery held to rehearse the Pitakas said, "In the brief exposition the two lower paths are discussed, in the detailed exposition the two higher paths. Taking into account the passage at the end of the section setting forth the detailed exposition that begins, he entirely abandons the underlying tendency to lust." But the elder, presiding over the council, said, "In the brief exposition the four paths are expounded as a group, and also in the detailed exposition." This query into the brief and detailed expositions which has been cleared up here should be understood in all the following sections in the way stated here. From here on, we shall only comment on terms that are new or obscure. The unwholesome courses of action. 4. Herein, firstly, in the detailed exposition of the first section, As regards the passage beginning killing living beings is unwholesome, panatipato ko avuso akusalam. Unwholesome should be understood by way of the occurrence of unwholesomeness, or as what is opposed to the wholesome, which is to be dealt with below, section 6. As to characteristic, it is blameworthy and has painful result, or it is defiled. This, in the first place, is the comment upon the general terms here. But as regards the particular terms, the phrase killing living beings means the slaughter of a living being, the destruction of a living being. And here a living being, panna, is, according to ordinary usage, a being, satta. In the ultimate sense, it is the life faculty. Killing living beings is the volition to kill on the part of one who is aware, in respect of a living being, that it is a living being, and which volition, manifesting itself through one or the other of the doors of body and speech, initiates activity resulting in the cutting off of the life faculty. In relation to beings such as animals, etc., which lack moral qualities, guna, it is less blameworthy in respect of small living beings and more blameworthy in respect of beings with large bodies. Why? Because of the magnitude of the effort involved, and when the effort involved is equal, because of the magnitude of the object, the being killed. In relation to beings such as humans, etc., who possess moral qualities, it is less blameworthy in respect of beings with few good qualities and more blameworthy in respect of beings with great qualities. When the size of the body and moral qualities are equal, however, it is less blameworthy when the defilements in activity are mild and more blameworthy when they are strong, so it should be understood. There are 5 constituents for this. Act of killing a living being, awareness that it is a living being, the mind to kill, activity, and the death of the being thereby. There are 6 means: one's own person, command, a missile, a fixed contrivance, a magical spell, supernormal power. To explore this matter in detail, however, would involve too much diffuseness. Therefore, we shall not explore it in detail or any other subject similar in kind. Those who wish to go into the matter may do so by looking it up in the Sammaditthi, the Vinaya commentary. Taking what is not given, adinadana. The carrying off of others' goods, stealing, robbery, is what is meant. Herein, what is not given is another's possession, which the other may use as he likes without incurring penalty or blame. Taking what is not given is the volition to steal on the part of one who is aware, in respect of another's possession, that it is another's possession, and which volition initiates activity resulting in the taking of that thing. That, taking of what is not given, is less blameworthy when the other's property is of low value, and more blameworthy when it is of high value. Why? Because of the high value of the object, stolen. When the value of the objects is equal, the act is more blameworthy when the object belongs to one of outstanding qualities, and less blameworthy when the object belongs to one who, in comparison, is inferior with respect to moral qualities. There are 5 constituents of this act: another's possession, awareness that it is another's possession, the mind to steal, the activity, and the carrying off of the object thereby. There are 6 means: one's own person, etc., as for killing. And these, acts of stealing, may be classed according to the way in which they occur by way of the following: taking by theft, by force, by concealment, by stratagem, by fraud. This here is in brief. The details, however, are given in the Sammaditthi. Misconduct in sensual pleasures, kamesu michakara. Here, in sensual pleasures, kamesu, means in regard to sexual intercourse. Misconduct is entirely reprehensible vile conduct, As to characteristic, sexual misconduct is the volition to transgress bounds occurring through the body door by way of unrighteous intent. Herein, out of bounds for men, firstly, are the 20 kinds of women, that is, the 10 beginning with those protected by the mother, namely, protected by the mother, protected by the father, protected by the mother and father, protected by the brother, protected by the sister, protected by relatives, protected by the clan, protected by the law, under protection, entailing a penalty, and the 10 beginning with those purchased with money, namely, one purchased with money, one who lives with a man by her own desire, one who lives with a man on account of wealth, one who lives with a man on account of cloth, one who is given in marriage with the ceremony of dipping the hand in water, one who has been taken to wife and relieved of her burden-carrying head pad, one who is a slave and a wife, one who is a servant and a wife, one who is carried off in a raid, one engaged at so much a time. Then, as concerns women, for the 12 kinds of women consisting of the 2, namely, under protection and entailing a penalty, and the 10 beginning with those purchased with money, other men are out of bounds. This sexual misconduct is less blameworthy when the person out of bounds is without good qualities such as virtue, etc., and more blameworthy when the person possesses good qualities such as virtue, etc. There are 4 constituents of this act: an object which is out of bounds, the mind to engage in that, the effort to engage, and consent to the union of sexual organs. The means is single, one's own person. False speech, musavada. False, musa, is the verbal effort or bodily effort for destroying welfare, made by one bent on deceiving. False speech is the volition initiating the verbal effort or bodily effort of deceiving another on the part of one intent on deceiving. According to another method, false means an unreal, untrue case, speech, the communication of that as being real, true. As to characteristic, false speech is the volition of one desiring to communicate to another an untrue case as being true, which volition initiates such an act of communication. This is less blameworthy when the welfare destroyed is slight, and more blameworthy when the welfare destroyed is great. Further, when it occurs on the part of householders who, not wishing to give away some belonging of theirs, say, "I do not have it," it is less blameworthy. When one who is a witness speaks falsely for the purpose of destroying another's welfare, it is more blameworthy. In the case of those gone forth, when it occurs by their saying as a joke, after they have obtained just a little oil or ghee in the manner of the Puranas, "Today the oil is flowing in the village just like a river," then it is less blameworthy. But for those who speak, as a witness, saying that they have seen what they have not seen, it is more blameworthy. There are 4 constituents of this act: an untrue case, the mind to deceive, the appropriate effort, the communicating of that meaning to another. The means is single, one's own person only. That is to be regarded as the performing of the action of deceiving another by means of the body, or by means of something attached to the body, or by means of speech. If, through that action, the other understands that meaning, one is bound by the karma of false speech at the very moment of the volition initiating the action, malicious speech, etc. The kind of speech that creates in the heart of the person to whom it is spoken affection for oneself and voidness of affection for another is malicious speech, pisunavaka. The kind of speech by which one makes both oneself and another harsh, the kind of speech which is also itself harsh, being pleasant neither to the ear nor to the heart, that is harsh speech, farusavaka. That by which one gossips idly without meaning is gossip, samphapalapa. Also, the volition that is the root cause of these gains the name malicious speech, etc. and that only is intended here. Therein, malicious speech is the volition of one with a defiled mind, which volition initiates an effort by body or by speech either to cause division among others or to endear oneself to another. It is less blameworthy when the person divided has few good qualities, and more blameworthy when such a one has great qualities. Its constituents are four: another person to be divided, the intention to divide, thinking. Thus these will be separated and split, or the desire to endear oneself, thinking. Thus I shall become loved and intimate, the appropriate effort, the communicating of that meaning to that person. Harsh speech is the entirely harsh volition initiating an effort by body or by speech to wound another's vital feelings. This is an example given for the purpose of making it clear. A village boy, it is said, went to the forest without heeding his mother's words. Unable to make him turn back, she scolded him angrily, saying, "May a wild buffalo chase you." Then a buffalo appeared before him, right there in the forest. The boy made an asseveration of truth, saying, "Let it not be as my mother said, but as she thought." The buffalo stood as though tied there. Thus, although the means employed was that of wounding the vital feelings, because of the gentleness of her mind, it was not harsh speech. For sometimes parents even say to their children, "May robbers chop you to pieces," yet they do not even wish a lotus leaf to fall upon them. And teachers and preceptors sometimes say to their pupils, "What is the use of these shameless and heedless brats? Drive them out." Yet they wish for their success in learning and attainment. Just as, through gentleness of mind, speech is not harsh, so through gentleness of speech, speech does not become unharsh. For the words, "Let him sleep in peace," spoken by one wishing to kill, are not unharsh speech. But harsh speech is such on account of harshness of mind only. It is less blameworthy when the person to whom it is spoken has few good qualities, and more blameworthy when such a one has great qualities. Its constituents are three: another to be abused, an angry mind, the abusing. Gossip is the unwholesome volition initiating an effort by body or by speech to communicate what is purposeless. It is less blameworthy when indulged in mildly, and more blameworthy when indulged in strongly. Its constituents are two: the being intent on purposeless stories such as the Bharata War or the abduction of Sita, etc., and the telling of such stories. Covetousness, abhijha. It covets, thus it is covetousness. Having become directed towards others' goods, it occurs through inclination towards them, is the meaning. It has the characteristic of coveting others' goods thus, "Oh, that this were mine." It is less blameworthy and more blameworthy as in the case of taking what is not given. Its constituents are two: another's goods, and the inclination for them to be one's own. For even though greed has arisen based on another's goods, it is not classed as a completed course of karma so long as one does not incline to them as one's own with the thought, "Oh, that this were mine." Ill will, bhayapada. It injures welfare and happiness, thus it is ill will, hitasukam bhyapadayati ti bhyapado. Its characteristic is the mental defect of wishing for the destruction of others. It is less blameworthy and more blameworthy as in the case of harsh speech. Its constituents are two: another being, and the wish for that being's destruction. For even though anger has arisen based on another being, there is no breach of a course of karma so long as one does not wish, "Oh, that this being might be cut off and destroyed." Wrong view, Sammaditthi. It sees wrongly due to the absence of a correct grasp of things, thus it is wrong view. Its characteristic is the mistaken view that there is no result from giving, etc. It is less blameworthy and more blameworthy as in the case of gossip. Moreover, it is less blameworthy when not fixed in destiny, and more blameworthy when fixed. Its constituents are two: a mistaken manner of grasping the basis for the view, and the appearance of that basis in accordance with the manner in which it has been grasped. Now the exposition of these 10 courses of unwholesome karma should be understood in 5 ways. As to mental state, dhammato; as to category, kotasato; as to object, aramanato; as to feeling, vedanato; and as to root, mulato. Herein, as to mental state, the first 7 among these are volitional states only. The 3 beginning with covetousness are associated with volition. As to category, the 8 consisting of the first 7 and wrong view are courses of karma only, not roots. Covetousness and ill will are courses of karma and also roots. For covetousness, having arrived at the state of a root, is the unwholesome root greed, and ill will is the unwholesome root hate. As to object, killing living beings because it has the life faculty as object has a formation as object. Taking what is not given has beings as object or formations as object. Misconduct in sensual pleasures has formations as object by way of tangible object, but some say it also has beings as object. False speech has beings or formations as object, likewise malicious speech. Harsh speech has only beings as object. Gossip has either beings or formations as object by way of the seen, heard, sensed, and cognized. Likewise, covetousness. Ill will has only beings as object. Wrong view has formations as object by way of the states belonging to the 3 planes of being. As to feeling, killing living beings has painful feeling. For although kings, seeing a robber, say laughingly, "Go and execute him," their volition consummating the action is associated only with pain. Taking what is not given has 3 feelings. Misconduct in sensual pleasures has 2 feelings, pleasant and neutral, but in the mind which consummates the action there is no neutral feeling. False speech has 3 feelings, likewise malicious speech. Harsh speech has painful feeling only. Gossip has 3 feelings. Covetousness has 2 feelings, pleasant and neutral. Likewise, wrong view. Ill will has painful feeling only. As to root, killing living beings has 2 roots by way of hate and delusion. Taking what is not given by way of hate and delusion or by way of greed and delusion. Misconduct by way of greed and delusion. False speech by way of hate and delusion, or by way of greed and delusion. Likewise for malicious speech and gossip, harsh speech by way of hate and delusion. Covetousness has 1 root by way of delusion, likewise ill will. Wrong view has 2 roots by way of greed and delusion. The unwholesome roots. 5. Greed is a root of the unwholesome, etc. It is greedy, thus it is greed, lubhati ti lobho. It offends against, it hates, thus it is hate, dusati ti doso. It deludes, thus it is delusion, muihati ti moho. Among these, greed is itself unwholesome in the sense that it is blameworthy and has painful results, and it is a root of these unwholesome deeds, beginning with killing living beings, for some in the sense that it is an associated originative cause, for some in the sense that it is a decisive support condition. Thus, it is an unwholesome root. This too is said, one who is lustful, friends, overwhelmed and with mind obsessed by lust, kills a living being. The same method applies to the state of being unwholesome roots in the cases of hate and delusion. The wholesome courses of action. 6. Abstention from killing living beings is wholesome, panatipata veramani, etc. Here, killing living beings, etc. have the same meaning as aforesaid. It crushes the hostile, thus it is abstention, veram manatiti veramani. The meaning is that it abandons the hostile, or, with that as the instrument one abstains, viramati, the syllable VE being substituted for the syllable VI. This here is, in the first place, the commentary on the phrasing. But as to the meaning, abstention is refraining, virati, associated with wholesome consciousness. What is stated thus? For one refraining from killing living beings, that which is on that occasion the leaving off, the refraining. That is the refraining associated with wholesome consciousness. As to kind, it is threefold: refraining in the presence of opportunity, refraining because of an undertaking, and refraining because of eradication, of defilements. Herein, refraining in the presence of an opportunity, sampata virati, is to be understood as the refraining which occurs in those who have not undertaken any training rule, but who do not transgress when an opportunity for doing so presents itself because they reflect upon their birth, age, learning, etc. Like the lay follower Kakana in the island of Sri Lanka. When he was a boy, it is said his mother developed an illness, and the doctor said, "Fresh hare's flesh is needed." Then Kakana's brother sent him, saying, "Go, dear, and hunt in the field." He went there. On that occasion, a hare had come to eat the young corn. On seeing him, it bolted swiftly, but it got entangled in a creeper and squealed, "Kiri, kiri." Guided by the sound, Kakana went and caught it, thinking, "I will make medicine for my mother." Then he thought again, "This is not proper for me, that I should deprive another of life for the sake of my mother's life." So he released it, saying, "Go and enjoy the grass and the water with the other hares in the forest." When his brother asked him, "Did you get a hare, dear?" he told him what had happened. His brother scolded him. He went to his mother and determined upon an asseveration of truth. "Since I was born, I am not aware that I have ever intentionally deprived a living being of life." Straightway his mother became well. Refraining because of an undertaking, samadana virati, is to be understood as the refraining which occurs in those who do not transgress in a particular case because they have undertaken training rules, giving up even their own lives in the undertaking of the training rules, and in what is superior to that, like the lay follower who dwelt at Theravada mountain. It is said that after undertaking the training rules from the elder Pingala Buddha Rakita, who lived in the Ambariya monastery, he was plowing a field. Then his ox got lost. Searching for it, he climbed up Theravada mountain. There a large serpent seized him. He thought, "Let me cut off his head with this sharp axe." Then he thought again, "This is not proper for me, that I should break a training rule that I have undertaken in the presence of my honored teacher." Thinking up to the third time, "I will give up my life but not the training rule," he threw the sharp hand axe that was slung on his shoulder into the forest. Straightway the creature released him and went away. Refraining because of eradication of defilements, samuccadavirati, is to be understood as the refraining associated with the noble path. After the arising of this, even the thought, "I will kill a living being," does not occur to the noble persons. This refraining is called wholesome, kusala, because of the occurrence of wholesomeness, kosala, or because of shedding the vile, kuchitasa salanato. Also, evil conduct is commonly called weeds, kusa, and it mows this down, lunatai. Thus, it is called wholesome. As in the case of the unwholesome, so for these courses of wholesome karma, the exposition should be understood in 5 ways: as to mental state, as to category, as to object, as to feeling, and as to root. Herein, as to mental state, the first 7 among these can be both volitions and abstinences. The last 3 are associated with volition only. As to category, the first 7 are courses of karma only, not roots. The last 3 are courses of karma and also roots. For non-covetousness, having arrived at the state of a root, is the wholesome root non-greed. Non-ill will is the wholesome root non-hate, and right view is the wholesome root non-delusion. As to object, the objects of these are the same as the objects of killing living beings, etc. For abstention is spoken of in relation to something which can be transgressed. But just as the noble path, which has nibbana as object, abandons the defilements, so too should these courses of kama, which have the life faculty, etc., as object, be understood to abandon the kinds of evil conduct beginning with killing living beings. As to feeling, all have pleasant feeling or neutral feeling, for there is no painful feeling which arrives at the wholesome. As to root, the first 7 courses of kama have 3 roots by way of non-greed, non-hate, and non-delusion in one who abstains by means of consciousness associated with knowledge. They have 2 roots in one who abstains by means of consciousness dissociated from knowledge. Non-covetousness has 2 roots in one who abstains by means of consciousness associated with knowledge. 1 root in one who abstains by means of consciousness dissociated from knowledge. Non-greed, however, is not by itself its own root. The same method applies in the case of non-ill will. Right view always has 2 roots by way of non-greed and non-hate. The wholesome roots. 7. Non-greed is a root of the wholesome, alabho, kusalamulam, etc. Non-greed is not greed. This is a term for the state that is opposed to greed. The same method applies in the case of non-hate and non-delusion. Among these, non-greed is itself wholesome, and it is a root of these wholesome courses of kama, beginning with abstention from killing living beings. For some in the sense that it is an associated originative cause, and for some in the sense that it is a decisive support condition. Thus, it is a wholesome root. The same method applies to the state of being wholesome roots in the cases of non-hate and non-delusion. Conclusion on the unwholesome and the wholesome. 8. Now, summing up the meaning of all that has been set forth in brief and in detail, he states the concluding section beginning with the words, "when a noble disciple." Herein has thus understood the wholesome, evam akusalam pajanati, means, has thus understood the unwholesome by way of the 10 courses of unwholesome kama as described. The same method applies in the case of the root of the unwholesome, etc. Up to this point, by a single method, emancipation as far as arahantship has been expounded for one who has the 4 noble truths as his meditation subject. How? Here, the 10 courses of unwholesome kama with the exception of covetousness, and the 10 courses of wholesome kama are the truth of suffering. These 2 states, covetousness and the greed which is a root of the unwholesome, are, literally speaking, the truth of the origin. Speaking figuratively, however, all the courses of kama are the truth of suffering, and all the wholesome and unwholesome roots are the truth of the origin. The non-occurrence of both is the truth of cessation. The noble path fully understanding suffering, abandoning its origin, and understanding its cessation is the truth of the path. Thus 2 truths are stated in their own nature, and 2 are to be understood by way of the guideline of conversion. He entirely abandons the underlying tendency to lust, so sabaso raganu sayam pahaya. Understanding thus the unwholesome, etc., he abandons in all ways the underlying tendency to lust. He abolishes the underlying tendency to aversion, patighanusayam pativinodetva, and he removes in all ways too the underlying tendency to aversion, is what is meant. Up to this point, the path of non-return is stated. 19. He extirpates the underlying tendency to the view and conceit, I am, asmiti dithimananusayam samuhanitva. He extricates the underlying tendency to the view and conceit, which occurs in the mode of grasping the five aggregates as a group with the notion, I am, due to failure to distinguish any state among them. Therein, by the phrase, the underlying tendency to the view and conceit, I am, dithimananusayam, what is meant is the underlying tendency to conceit, which is similar to a view, dithisadisam mananusayam. For this underlying tendency to conceit is similar to a view because it occurs with the notion, I am. Therefore, it is stated thus. And one who wishes to understand this conceit, I am, in detail, should look up the Kamaka Sutta in the Khandiyavaga. By abandoning ignorance, avijampahaya, having abandoned ignorance, the root of the round, of existence, and arousing true knowledge, vijam upadetva, having aroused the true knowledge of the path of arahantship which completely extricates that ignorance. At this point, the path of arahantship is stated. He here and now makes an end of suffering, ditheva dame dukhasantakaro hoti. In this very existence he becomes one who cuts off the suffering of the round. In that way too, etavatapiko avuso, he marks off, this first part of, the teaching, by way of the attention and penetration stated in this exposition of the courses of Kama, is what is meant. The rest is as aforesaid. Thus he concludes the exposition by means of the path of non-return and the path of arahantship. The four nutriments, General 9. Saying, good friend, etc., and has arrived at this true Dhamma. Thus, having heard the Venerable Sariputta's exposition of the four truths under the heading of the wholesome and the unwholesome, the bhikkhus delighted in his words with the statement, good friend, and rejoiced with the mind that aroused that statement. What is meant is that they agreed by word and approved by mind. Now, because the elder was competent to give an exposition on the four truths in diverse ways, as the Blessed One said, Bhikkhus, Sāriputta is able to propound, to teach, the Four Noble Truths in detail, or because he had said, in that way too, being desirous of giving a further exposition, the bhikkhus, being desirous of hearing the teaching of the Four Truths by another method, asked him a further question. By asking, but, friend, might there be another way? Would there be another case? They asked another question additional to that question asked and answered already by the Venerable Sariputta himself. Or what is meant is that they asked a question subsequent to the previous one. Then, answering them, the elder said, there might be, friends, and so on. 10. Herein, this is the elucidation of the terms that are not clear. Nutriment, ahara, is a condition, pakaya. For a condition nourishes its own fruit, therefore it is called nutriment. 11. Of beings that already have come to be, bhutanam, vasatanam, etc. Here come to be, bhuta, means come to birth, reborn. Seeking a new existence, sambhavisinam, means those who seek, search for, existence, birth, production. Therein, among the four kinds of generation, beings born from eggs and from the womb are said to be seeking a new existence, as long as they have not broken out of the eggshell or the placenta. When they have broken out of the eggshell or the placenta and emerged outside, they are said to have come to be. The moisture-born and the spontaneously born are said to be seeking a new existence at the first moment of consciousness. From the second moment of consciousness onwards, they are said to have come to be. Or alternatively, come to be is born, reproduced. This is a term for those who have destroyed the cankers, arahants, who are reckoned thus. They have come to be only, but they will not come to be again. Seeking a new existence means they seek a new existence. This is a term for worldlings and disciples in higher training who seek a new existence in the future too, because they have not abandoned the fetter of being. Thus, by these two terms he includes all beings in all ways. For the maintenance, thitiya, for the purpose of maintaining, for the support, anugahaya, for the purpose of supporting, for the purpose of helping. This is merely a difference of words, but the meaning of the two terms is one only. Or, alternatively, for the maintenance is for the non-interruption of this or that being by means of the serial connection of arisen states. For the support is for the arising of unarisen states. And both these expressions should be regarded as applicable in both cases thus: for the maintenance and support of those that have come to be, and for the maintenance and support of those seeking a new existence. The four kinds of nutriment. Physical food as nutriment, lit. Food made into a ball, kabalinkaro aharo, is nutriment that can be swallowed after making it into a ball. This is a term for the nutritive essence which has as its basis boiled rice, junket, etc. Gross or subtle, olariko va sukumo va. It is gross because of the grossness of the basis, and subtle because of the subtlety of the basis. But because physical nutriment is included in subtle materiality, by way of its individual essence, it is subtle only. And also that grossness and subtlety should be understood relatively in respect of the basis. The nutriment of peacocks is subtle compared with the nutriment of crocodiles. Crocodiles, they say, swallow stones, and these dissolve on reaching their stomachs. Peacocks eat such animals as snakes, scorpions, etc. But the nutriment of hyenas is subtle compared with the nutriment of peacocks. These, they say, eat horns and bones thrown away 3 years before, and these become soft as yams as soon as they are moistened with their saliva. Also, the nutriment of elephants is subtle compared with the nutriment of hyenas, for these eat the branches of various trees, etc. The nutriment of the guile buffalo, the antelope, the deer, etc., is subtler than the nutriment of elephants. These, they say, eat the sapless leaves of various kinds of trees, etc. The nutriment of cows is subtler than their nutriment. They eat fresh and dried grass. The nutriment of hares is subtler than their nutriment. That of birds is subtler than that of hares. That of barbarians is subtler than that of birds. That of village headmen is subtler than that of barbarians. That of kings and kings' ministers is subtler than village headmen's. That of a wheel-turning monarch is subtler than their nutriment. The earth deity's nutriment is subtler than that of a wheel-turning monarch. The nutriment of the deities of the four great kings is subtler than that of the earth deities. Thus, nutriment should be elaborated up to that of the deities who wield power over others' creations, but saying, their nutriment is subtle, the end is reached. And here, in a basis that is gross, the nutritive essence is limited and weak. In one that is subtle, it is strong. Thus one who has drunk even a full bowl of gruel is soon hungry again and desirous of eating anything. But after drinking even a small amount of ghee, he will not want to eat for the whole day. Therein, it is the basis that dispels fatigue, but it is unable to preserve. But the nutritive essence preserves, though it cannot dispel fatigue. But when the two are combined, they both dispel fatigue and preserve. Contact as the second, faso dutiyo. The sixfold contact beginning with eye contact should be understood as the second of these four kinds of nutriment. And this is the method of the teaching itself. Therefore it should not be inquired into here, saying, for this reason it is the second or the third. Mental volition, manosansatana, volition, satana, itself is stated. Consciousness, vijnanam, any kind of consciousness whatever. It may be asked here, If the meaning of condition is the meaning of nutriment, then when other conditions also exist for beings, why are only these four stated? It should be said in reply, it is because they are the special conditions for personal continuity. For physical nutriment is the special condition for the material body of beings that eat physical nutriment. As regards the group of mental constituents, contact is the special condition for feeling, mental volition for consciousness, and consciousness for mentality, materiality. As it is said, just as bhikkhus, this body has nutriment for its maintenance, is maintained in dependence on nutriment, and without nutriment is not maintained. And likewise, with contact as condition, feeling, with formations as condition, consciousness, with consciousness as condition, mentality, materiality. What is this nutriment, and what does it nourish? Physical nutriment nourishes the materiality with nutritive essence as eighth. Contact as nutriment nourishes the three feelings. Mental volition as nutriment nourishes the three kinds of being. Consciousness as nutriment nourishes the mentality materiality of rebirth linking. How? As soon as it is placed in the mouth, physical food as nutriment brings into being the 8 kinds of materiality aforesaid. Then each lump of cooked rice ground by the teeth, on being swallowed, brings into being unit after unit of the 8 kinds of materiality. Thus, it nourishes the materiality with nutritive essence as 8th. But with contact as nutriment, when contact productive of pleasant feeling arises, it nourishes pleasant feeling. Contact productive of painful feeling nourishes painful feeling. Contact productive of neither painful nor pleasant feeling nourishes neither painful nor pleasant feeling. Thus, in all ways, contact as nutriment nourishes the 3 kinds of feeling. In the case of mental volition as nutriment, karma leading to sense sphere, being nourishes sense sphere being. Karma leading to fine material and immaterial being nourishes its respective kind of being. Thus, in all ways, mental volition as nutriment nourishes the 3 kinds of being. But with consciousness as nutriment, it is said that it nourishes by way of connascence condition, etc. The 3, immaterial, aggregates associated with itself at the moment of rebirth linking and the 30 kinds of materiality that arise by way of triple continuity. Thus, consciousness nourishes the mentality materiality of rebirth linking. And here, by the words mental volition as nutriment nourishes the 3 kinds of being, only the wholesome and unwholesome volition accompanied by taints is meant. By the words consciousness nourishes the mentality materiality of rebirth linking, only rebirth linking consciousness is meant. However, these are to be understood indiscriminately as nutriments as well, because they nourish the states that are associated with them and originated by them. The 4 functions. As regards these 4 kinds of nutriment, physical food as nutriment accomplishes the function of nutriment by sustaining, contact by contacting, touching, mental volition by accumulating, consciousness by cognizing. How? Physical food as nutriment by sustaining is for the maintenance of beings by maintaining the body. For this body, though generated by karma, is sustained by physical food and stands for 10 years or 100 years up to the end of the lifespan. Like what? Like a child which, though given birth by the mother, is nurtured by the milk, etc., given to him to drink by the wet nurse and thus lives long. Also, as a house is supported by a prop. This too has been said, untraced. Great King, just as when a house is collapsing, they prop it up with other timber, and that house, being propped up by other timber, does not collapse. So too, this body is supported by nutriment, persists in dependence upon nutriment. Thus, Physical food as nutriment accomplishes the function of nutriment by sustaining. Accomplishing it thus, physical food as nutriment becomes a condition for two material continuities, namely, for that originated by nutriment and that kamically acquired. 28. It is a condition for the kama-born materiality by becoming its preserver. It is a condition for that originated by nutriment by becoming its producer. Then contact, by contacting the object which is the basis for pleasure, etc., is for the maintenance of beings by causing the occurrence of pleasant feeling, etc. Mental volition, accumulating by way of wholesome and unwholesome kama, is for the maintenance of beings because it provides the root of existence. Consciousness, by cognizing, is for the maintenance of beings by causing the occurrence of mentality materiality. The four dangers. Now, while these are accomplishing their function of nutriment by sustaining, etc., four dangers are to be seen. The danger of desire in the case of physical food as nutriment, the danger of approach in the case of contact, the danger of accumulating in the case of mental volition, and the danger of launching into a new existence here or there by way of taking rebirth linking in the case of consciousness. What are the reasons for this? Because having aroused desire for physical food, beings face cold, etc., to undertake such work as checking, accounting, etc., and incur not a little suffering. And some who have gone forth in this dispensation seek nutriment through such improper means as the practice of medicine, etc., and they are to be censured here and now, and hereafter they become recluse ghosts, in the manner described thus in the Lakhana Samyutta, and his outer robe was burning, blazing, etc. For this reason, desire itself is to be understood as the danger in physical food as nutriment. Those who approach contact, who find gratification in contact, commit crimes in respect of others' guarded and protected belongings, such as their wives, etc. When the owners of the goods catch them with their belongings, they cut them into pieces or throw them onto a rubbish heap or hand them over to the king. And then the king has various tortures inflicted upon them. And with the breakup of the body, after death, a bad destination is to be expected for them. Thus, this entire danger, that pertaining to the here and now and that pertaining to the afterlife, has come about rooted in contact. For this reason, approach is to be understood as the danger in the case of the nutriment contact. The entire danger in the three realms of existence has come about by the accumulation of wholesome and unwholesome kama and is rooted in that accumulation. For this reason, accumulation is to be understood as the danger in the nutriment mental volition. And in whatever place rebirth linking consciousness launches, the new existence, in that same place it is reborn by seizing the rebirth linking mentality materiality. When it is produced, all dangers are produced, for they are all rooted in it. For this reason, launching is to be understood as the danger in the nutriment consciousness. The four similes. In regard to these nutriments with their dangers, for the sake of eliminating desire for the nutriment physical food, the fully enlightened one taught the simile of son's flesh in the passage beginning thus: suppose bhikkhus, a couple, a man and his wife. For the sake of eliminating desire for the nutriment contact, he taught the simile of the flayed cow in the passage beginning thus: suppose bhikkhus, there was a flayed cow. For the sake of eliminating desire for the nutriment mental volition, he taught the simile of the charcoal pit in the passage beginning thus: suppose bhikkhus, there was a charcoal pit. And for the sake of eliminating desire for the nutriment consciousness, he taught the simile of the man struck with 300 spears in the passage beginning thus: suppose bhikkhus, there was a thief, a crook. Therein, taking the essential meaning, there follows a brief interpretation of the meaning. A couple, it is said, a man and his wife, took their son and set out on a desert trail 100 yojanas long, with only limited provisions. When they had gone 50 yojanas, their provisions ran out. Exhausted by hunger and thirst, they sat down in some scanty shade. Then the man said to his wife, "My dear, for 50 yojanas on all sides there is neither a village nor a town. Therefore, though a man can do many kinds of work, such as plowing, guarding cattle, etc., it is not possible for me to do that. Come, kill me, eat half of my flesh, and having made the other half into provisions for the journey, cross out of the desert together with our son." The wife said, "Dear husband, though a woman can do many kinds of work, such as spinning thread, etc., it is not possible for me to do that. Come, kill me, eat half of my flesh, and having made the other half into provisions for the journey, cross out of the desert together with our son." Then the man said, "My dear, the death of the mother would mean the death of two, for a young boy cannot live without his mother. But if we both live, then we can beget another child again. Come now, let us kill our child, take his flesh, and cross out of this desert." Then the mother said to the son, "Dear, go to your father." He went, but the father said, "For the sake of supporting this child, I incurred much suffering through such work as plowing, guarding cattle, etc. I cannot kill the boy. You kill your son." Then he said, "Dear, go to your mother." But the mother said, "Longing for a son, I incurred much suffering by observing the cow observance, the dog observance, praying to the gods, etc., not to speak of bearing him in my womb. It is not possible for me to kill him." Then she said, "Dear, go to your father." The boy died from going back and forth between the father and the mother. Seeing him dead, they wept, and having taken the flesh as described above, they departed. Because that flesh of their son was repulsive to them for 9 reasons. It was not eaten for enjoyment, nor for intoxication, nor for making the body strong and beautiful, but only for the purpose of crossing out of the desert. For what 9 reasons was it repulsive? Because it was the flesh of their own offspring, the flesh of a relative, the flesh of a son, the flesh of a dear son, the flesh of a youngster, raw flesh, not beef, unsalted, unspiced. Therefore the bhikkhu who sees the nutriment physical food thus as similar to son's flesh eliminates the desire for it. This, in the first place, is the interpretation of the meaning of the simile of son's flesh. Then, as regards the simile of the flayed cow, if a cow were stripped of its skin from the neck to the hooves and then set free, whatever it would rest upon would become a basis of pain for it, since it would be bitten by the small creatures living there. So too, whatever physical basis or object contact stands upon as its support becomes a basis for the felt pain originating from that basis or object. Therefore, a bhikkhu who sees the nutriment contact thus as similar to a flayed cow eliminates the desire for it. This is the interpretation of the meaning of the simile of the flayed cow. Then, as regards the simile of the charcoal pit, the 3 realms of being are like a charcoal pit in the sense of a great burning heat, lit, a great fever. Like the 2 men who grab hold of a weaker man by both his arms and drag him towards it, is mental volition in the sense that it drags one towards the realms of being. Therefore, a bhikkhu who sees the nutriment mental volition thus, as similar to a charcoal pit, eliminates the desire for it. This is the interpretation of the meaning of the simile of the charcoal pit. Then, as regards the simile of the man struck with 300 spears, the 100 spears that strike the man in the morning make 100 wound openings in his body, and without remaining inside they pierce through and fall on the other side, and so with the other 200 spears as well. Thus his whole body is cut again and again by the spears which come without piercing him in a place where another has already struck. There is no measuring the pain arisen in him from even one of the wound openings, not to speak of 300 wound openings. Therein, the time of the generation of the rebirth linking consciousness is like the time of being struck by a spear. The production of the aggregates is like the production of the wound openings. The arising of the various kinds of suffering rooted in the round of existence, once the aggregates have been born, is like the arising of suffering on account of the wound openings. Another method of interpretation is as follows. The rebirth-linking consciousness is like the thief. His materiality conditioned by consciousness is like the wound openings created by the striking of the spears. The arising of the various kinds of suffering by way of the 32 types of torture and the 89 types of diseases in regard to consciousness conditioned by materiality. This should be regarded as like the arising of severe pain for that man conditioned by the wound openings. Therefore, a bhikkhu who sees the nutriment consciousness thus, as similar to one struck by 300 spears, eliminates the desire for it. This is the interpretation of the meaning of the simile of the man struck by 300 spears. Full understanding. Thus, by eliminating desire in regard to these nutriments, he also fully understands these 4 nutriments. When these have been fully understood, the entire basis for them has also been fully understood. For this has been said by the Blessed One, Bhikkhus, when the nutriment physical food has been fully understood, lust for the 5 chords of sensual pleasure has been fully understood. When lust for the 5 chords of sensual pleasure has been fully understood, there exists no more any fetter bound by which the noble disciple might come back to this world. Bhikkhus, when the nutriment contact has been fully understood, the 3 feelings have been fully understood. When the 3 feelings have been fully understood, there is nothing further for the noble disciple to do, I say. Bhikkhus, when the nutriment mental volition has been fully understood, the 3 kinds of craving have been fully understood. When the 3 kinds of craving have been fully understood, there is nothing further for the noble disciple to do, I say. Bhikkhus, when the nutriment consciousness has been fully understood, materiality has been fully understood. When materiality has been fully understood, there is nothing further for the noble disciple to do, I say. The arising and cessation of nutriment. With the arising of craving, there is the arising of nutriment, tanhasamudaya aharasamudayo. This is the meaning. With the arising of craving in the previous existence, the arising of the nutriments occurs at rebirth linking in this existence. How? Because at the moment of rebirth linking, there is the nutritive essence produced among the 30 types of materiality that have arisen by way of triple continuity. This is the kamically acquired physical food as nutriment produced by craving as its condition. But the contact and volition associated with the rebirth-linking consciousness and that mind or consciousness itself, these are the kamically acquired nutriments of contact, mental volition, and consciousness produced by craving as their condition. Thus, in the first place, the arising of the nutriments at rebirth linking should be understood as occurring with the arising of craving in the previous existence. But because the nutriments that are kamically acquired and those that are not kamically acquired have been discussed here combined, the principle of the arising of nutriment with the arising of craving should be understood to apply also to those that are not kamically acquired. For there is nutritive essence in the kinds of materiality that are aroused by the 8 types of consciousness accompanied by greed. This is the nutriment physical food that is not kamically acquired, yet is produced by connascent craving as its condition. but the contact and volition associated with the consciousness accompanied by greed and that mind or consciousness itself. These are the nutriments of contact, mental volition, and consciousness that are not kamically acquired yet are produced by craving as their condition. With the cessation of craving, there is cessation of nutriment, tanhani roda, aharani rodo. By this there is set forth the cessation of nutriment by the cessation of the craving that had become the condition for both nutriment that is kamically acquired and that which is not kamically acquired. The rest should be understood by the method stated, but there is this difference. Here the four truths are stated directly, and as here, so in all the following sections. Therefore, one who is unconfused in mind can deduce the truths throughout in what follows. 12. And in all the following sections the delimiting phrase, in that way too, friends, etavata pico avuso, should be construed according to the principle that has been expounded. Here, in the first place, this is the interpretation of it, in the present context. In that way too, what is meant is the attention and penetration stated by way of the teaching concerning nutriment, the same method throughout. The Four Noble Truths. 14. Now, delighting and rejoicing in the elder's words after saying as before, "Good friend," the bhikkhus asked a further question, and the elder answered them by another exposition. This method is found in all the following sections. Therefore, from here onwards, we shall explain the meaning only of the particular exposition he states in reply, without touching upon such words as are already explained. 15. In the brief exposition of this teaching, in the phrase, he understands suffering, dukkham pajanati, suffering is the truth of suffering. But regarding the detailed exposition, whatever needs to be said has all been said already in the Visuddhimagga, in the description of the truths. Aging and death. 21. From here onwards, the teaching is given by way of dependent arising, paticca samuppada. 22. Therein, in the section on aging and death, firstly as to the term there, tesum, this should be understood as a collective designation in brief for the many kinds of beings. For if one were to state the aging of individuals such as the aging of Devadatta, the aging of Sammaditthi, etc., one would never come to an end of beings. But there is no being not included by this term there. Therefore it was said above. This should be understood as a collective designation in brief for the many kinds of beings. In the various tamhi, this is a collective designation for the many different orders by way of destiny and birth. Orders of beings, satanikai, an indication of the nature of what is designated by the collective designation. Aging, old age, jara, jiranata, etc. As regards these, aging is the description of the nature. Old age is the description of the aspect. Brokenness, etc. are descriptions of the function with respect to the passage of time. And the last two terms are descriptions of the normal, process. For this is indicated as to nature by this term aging, jara. Hence, this is a description of its nature. It is indicated as to aspect by this term old age, jiranata. Hence, this is a description of its aspect. Brokenness, khandika. By this it is indicated as to the function of causing the broken state of teeth and nails on account of the passage of time. Grayness, palika. By this it is indicated as to the function of causing the head hairs and body hairs to turn gray. Wrinkling, validakata. By this it is indicated as to the wrinkled state of the skin after the withering of the flesh. Hence, the three terms beginning with brokenness are descriptions of function with respect to the passage of time, By these, evident aging is shown, which becomes evident by the showing of these alterations. For just as the course taken by water or wind or fire is evident from the damaged and broken state, or the burnt state, of the grass and trees, etc., and yet the course that has been taken is not the water, etc., itself so too. The course taken by aging is evident through brokenness of teeth, etc., and it is apprehended by opening the eyes, but the brokenness, etc., themselves are not aging, nor is aging cognizable by the eye. Decline of life, weakness of faculties, ayuno samhani indriyanam paripako. By these terms, it is indicated by means of the normal process, known as the exhaustion of the lifespan and the weakening of the eye faculty, etc., that has become manifest with the passage of time. Hence, these last two are to be understood as descriptions of its normal process. Therein, because the lifespan of one who has reached aging is dwindling, aging is called decline of life as a metaphor for the cause stated in terms of its effect, and because the eye faculty, etc., which at the time of youth were quite clear and could easily grasp even subtle objects, become deficient, obscure, unable to grasp even gross objects when one has reached old age. Therefore, it is called weakness of faculties also as a metaphor for the cause stated in terms of its effect. This aging thus described is all of two kinds, evident and concealed. Therein, the aging of material phenomena shown by brokenness, etc., is called evident aging, pakadajara. But in the case of immaterial phenomena, because their alteration in such a way is not visible, their aging is called concealed aging, patikanajara. Therein, the brokenness that is seen is simply color, vana, because of the ease of comprehending such things as the teeth, etc. Having seen this with the eye and reflected on it with the mind door, one knows aging thus. These teeth have been afflicted by aging, just as one knows the existence of water below when one has noticed the heads of cows, etc., bound to the place where the water is located. Again, aging is twofold thus, as continuous and as discrete. Therein, continuous aging, avisijara, is the aging of such things as gems, gold, silver, coral, the sun and moon, etc. It is so called because of the difficulty of perceiving in such things distinct changes in color, etc., at regular intervals, as we can in the case of living beings passing through the decade of childhood, etc., and in the case of vegetation, lit, non-breathing things, such as flowers, fruits, buds, etc. The meaning is aging that progresses without interval. Discrete aging, savisijara, is the aging of the things other than those, that is, of the aforesaid things, living beings and vegetation. It is so called because it is easy to perceive in them distinct changes in color, etc., at regular intervals, so it should be understood. Following this, in the definition of death, the term there, tisum tessum, should be understood by the method stated above, in the definition of aging. Then, in the expression passing, passing away, etc., passing, cuti, is said by way of what has the nature to pass away. This is a collective designation applying to 1, 4, and 5 aggregate existence. Passing away, kavanada, is the indication of the characteristic by a word expressing the abstract state. Dissolution, beta, is an indication of the occurrence of the breaking up of the aggregates at the time of passing. Disappearance, antaradhana, is an indication of the absence of any manner of persistence of the aggregates at the time of passing, as they are broken like a broken pot. Dying, makumarana, death which is called dying. By this he rejects the idea of death as complete annihilation, completion of time, kalakirya. Time is the destroyer, and this, completion of time, is its activity. By this he explains death in conventional terminology. Now, to explain death in terms valid in the ultimate sense, he next says the dissolution of the aggregates, khandhanam bhedo, etc. For in the ultimate sense, it is only the aggregates that break up. It is not any so-called being that dies. But when the aggregates are breaking up, convention says a being is dying, and when they have broken up, convention says he is dead. Here, the dissolution of the aggregates is said by way of 4 and 5 constituent being, the laying down of the body, kaleva rasa nikepo, by way of 1 constituent being. Or alternatively, the dissolution of the aggregates is said by way of 4 constituent being. The laying down of the body should be understood by way of the other 2, that is, 1 and 5 constituent being. Why? Because of the existence of the body, that is, the material body, in those 2 realms of being. Or else, because in the realm of the 4 great kings, etc., the aggregates simply break up and they do not lay anything down. The dissolution of the aggregates is said with reference to them. The laying down of the body occurs among human beings, etc. And here, because it is the cause for the laying down of the body, death is called the laying down of the body. Thus the meaning should be understood. So this aging and this death are what is called aging and death. Iti ayan kajara, idam kamaranam, idam vukat avusojara maranam. This is spoken of as aging and death by combining the 2 into 1. Birth. 26. In the section on birth, in regard to the phrase birth, their coming to birth, etc., birth, yati, is in the sense of being born. This is stated with reference to those conceived with incomplete sense bases. Coming to birth, sanjati, is in the sense of the act of coming to birth. This is stated with reference to those conceived with already complete sense bases. Precipitation, or descent, okanti, is in the sense of being precipitated, descending. This is stated with reference to those born from the egg and from the womb, for they take rebirth linking as though descending and entering the eggshell or the placenta. Generation, abhinibhati, is in the sense of being generated. This is stated with reference to those born from moisture or those of spontaneous birth, for these are generated as soon as they become manifest. Now comes the exposition in terms valid in the ultimate sense. Manifestation, patubhava, is the arising. Of the aggregates, khandhanam, is to be understood as the arising of 1 aggregate in the 1 constituent realm of being, of 4 aggregates in 4 constituent realms, and of 5 aggregates in 5 constituent realms. Obtaining, padalabha, is the manifestation in continuity. The bases, ayatanenam, should be understood as comprising the sense bases arising, at conception, in this or that realm. For when the sense bases become manifest, then they are said to be obtained. This is called birth, ayam vuka avusojati. By this phrase, he comes to the conclusion on birth taught in both conventional terms and in the ultimate sense, with the arising of being, bhava samudaya. But here, one should understand comically active being as the condition for birth, the rest by the method stated. Being. 30. In the section on being, sense sphere being, kamabhava, is kamically active being and resultant being. Therein, kamically active being, kamabhava, is kama itself that leads to sense sphere being. For that is called being as a designation of the cause in terms of its effect, because it is the cause for resultant being, as when it is said, the arising of Buddhas is bliss, and the accumulation of evil is painful. DHP 194, 117. Resultant being, upapadibhava, is the group of kamically acquired aggregates produced by that kama, for that is called being, because it exists there. Thus, this kama and this result are both spoken of conjointly as sense sphere being. The same method applies to fine material being and immaterial being, rupa-rupabhava. With the arising of clinging, upadana samudaya. But here, clinging is a condition for wholesome kamically active being only by way of decisive support. It is a condition for unwholesome kamically active being by way of both decisive support and connascence. For all resultant being, it is a condition only by way of decisive support, the rest by the method stated. Clinging. 34. In the section on clinging, in regard to the phrase clinging to sense pleasures, etc., clinging to sense pleasures, kamupadana, is analyzed thus. By this one clings to the object of sensual pleasure, or this itself clings to it. Or alternatively, that is a sensual pleasure and it is clinging, thus it is clinging to sensual pleasure. It is firm grasping, dalhagahana, that is called clinging. For here the prefix upa has the sense of firmness. This is a designation for the lust for the 5 chords of sensual pleasure. This is the brief account here. The detailed account should be understood by the method stated thus. Therein, what is clinging to sensual pleasures? The sensual desire in regard to sensual pleasures, etc. DHS, section 12:14. So too that is a view and clinging. Thus it is clinging to views, dithupadana. Or alternatively, it clings to a view, or by this they cling to a view. For the subsequent view clings to the previous view, and thereby they cling to the view. As it is said, self and the world are eternal. Only this is true. Anything else is false, etc. This is a designation for the whole field of wrong views, except clinging to rituals and observances and clinging to a doctrine of self. This is the brief account here. The detailed account should be understood by the method stated thus. Therein, what is clinging to views? There is nothing given, etc. So too, by this they cling to rituals and observances, or this itself clings to them, or that is a ritual and observance and clinging. Thus it is clinging to rituals and observances, silabatupadana. For when one adheres to the idea that the cow ritual or cow observance brings purification, that itself is a clinging. This is the brief account here. The detailed account should be understood by the method stated thus. Therein, what is clinging to rituals and observances? The idea of recluses and Brahmins outside here, that is, outside the Buddha's dispensation, that purity is achieved by rules, etc. Now they assert in terms of this, thus it is a doctrine. By this they cling, thus it is clinging. What do they assert, or what do they cling to? Self. The clinging to a doctrine about a self is the clinging to a doctrine of self, atavadupadana. Or alternatively, by this a mere doctrine of self is clung to as self. Thus, it is clinging to a doctrine of self. This is a designation for personality view with its 20 cases. This is the brief account here. The detailed account should be understood by the method stated thus. Therein, what is clinging to a doctrine of self? Here, the uninstructed worldling who has no regard for noble ones, etc. With the arising of craving, tanhasamudaya, here, craving is a condition for clinging to sensual pleasures either by way of decisive support or by way of proximity, contiguity, absence, disappearance, and repetition. But for the rest, it is a condition by way of connascence, etc., too. The rest by the method stated. Craving. 38. In the section on craving, craving for forms, craving for mind objects, rupatana, dhammatana. These are names for the kinds of craving which occur in the course of a jhana cognitive process, jhana-vithi, in the eye door, etc. Like a name derived from the father, such as Sariputta, merchant's son, or Brahmanaputta, Brahman's son, their names are derived from the object, which is similar to the father as being the cause, hetu, of it only, not as is the case with eye contact, which is like a name derived from the mother in that the eye, like the mother in relation to her son, is a cause by its nature as a physical support, nisaya bhava. And here, craving for forms is craving that has forms as its object, craving in regard to forms. When this occurs by finding gratification in visible forms through its nature as sensual lust, it is craving for sensual pleasure, kamatanya. When it occurs by finding gratification in visible forms, thinking form is permanent, lasting, eternal, through its nature as lust accompanied by the eternalist view, then it is craving for being, bhavatanya. When it occurs by finding gratification in visible form, thinking form is annihilated, destroyed, and does not exist after death, through its nature as lust accompanied by the annihilationist view, then it is craving for non-being, vibhavatana. Thus it is threefold, and as craving for form, so too craving for sound, etc., are each threefold too. Thus there are 18 modes of craving, these 18 in respect of internal visible form, etc., and in respect of external visible form, etc., come to 36. So 36 in the past, 36 in the future, and 36 at present make up 108. Or there are 18 based on internal form, etc. Thus, on account of the internal there is the notion, I am, there is the notion, I am such, and so on. And there are 18 based on external form, etc. Thus, on account of the external there is the notion, I am, there is the notion, I am such, and so on. Thus, there are 36. So 36 in the past, 36 in the future, and 36 at present make up thus the 108 modes of craving. Again, when a classification is made, they reduce to only 6 classes of craving, in terms of their objects, forms, and the rest, and to only 3 types of craving, craving for sensual pleasure and the rest. Thus, craving should be known by the wise, through description, and when described, in detail, it should be known again, through classification of the detail. With the arising of feeling there is the arising of craving, vedana samudaya, tanha samudayo. But here, the word feeling is intended as resultant feeling. How is that the condition for craving in respect of the 6 sense doors? Because of its ability to produce gratification. For it is through the gratification in pleasant feeling that beings become enamored of that feeling, and after arousing craving for feeling and being seized by lust for feeling, they long only for a desirable visible form in the eye door, and on getting it, they find gratification in it, and they honor painters, etc., who provide such objects. Likewise, they long only for a desirable sound, etc., in the ear door, etc., and on getting it, they find gratification in it, and they honor musicians, perfume makers, cooks, spinners, and the teachers of the various crafts. Like what? Like those who, being enamored of a child, out of love for the child honor the wet nurse and give her suitable ghee, milk, etc., to eat and drink, the rest by the method stated. Feeling. 42. In the section on feeling, classes of feeling, Vedana Kaya, means groups of feeling. Feeling born of eye contact, feeling born of mind contact, Kaku Samfasaja Vedana, Mano Samfasaja Vedana, because of what has come down in the Vibhanga thus. There is feeling born of eye contact that is wholesome, that is unwholesome, that is indeterminate. Vib. 15. The wholesome, unwholesome, and indeterminate feelings that occur in the eye door, etc., are named after the physical base, which is similar to a mother, just as some are named after their mother, such as Sāriputta, Lady Sari's son, Mantaniputta, Lady Mantani's son, etc. But the word meaning here is this: feeling born of eye contact, kakusamfasaja vedana, is feeling that is born with eye contact as the cause. The same method throughout. This, in the first place, is the all-inclusive explanation. But by way of resultant in the I door, there are two I consciousnesses, two mind elements, three mind consciousness elements. Feeling should be understood as what is associated with these. This method also applies in the ear door, etc. In the mind door, feeling is associated only with the mind consciousness elements, with the arising of contact, phasa-samudaya. But here the arising in the five doors of the feelings that have the five physical bases as their support occurs with the arising of the connascent eye contact. For the rest, eye contact, etc., are conditions by way of decisive support. In the mind door, the arising of feelings on the occasion of registration and of the doorless feelings on the occasions of rebirth linking, life continuum, and death occurs with the arising of the connascent mind contact. The rest by the method stated. Contact. 46. In the section on contact, eye contact, kakusamphasa, is contact in the eye. The same method throughout: eye contact, body contact, kakusamphaso, kaya-samphaso. Up to this point, 10 kinds of contact have been stated, namely, the wholesome and unwholesome resultants having the five physical bases as their support. Mind contact, mano-samphasa. By this, he indicates, the remaining 22 kinds of contact associated with the mundane resultant, types of consciousness. With the arising of the sixfold base, salayatana samudaya, the arising of this sixfold contact should be understood to occur by way of the arising of the six bases, beginning with the eye base. The rest by the method stated. The sixfold base. 50. In the section on the sixfold base, as regards the eye base, kakayatana, etc., whatever should be said has all been said already in the Visuddhimagga, in the description of the aggregates, and in the description of the bases. 18th, 37, 52, 59th, 1, 16. With the arising of mentality materiality, namarupa samudaya. But here the arising of the sixfold base should be understood to occur from the arising of mentality materiality according to the method stated in the Visuddhimagga, in the description of dependent arising, as to which mentality, which materiality, and which mentality materiality are a condition for which base. This is 7, 206, 219. Mentality materiality. 54. In the section on mentality materiality, mentality, nama, has the characteristic of bending, namana. Materiality, rupa, has the characteristic of being molested, rupana. In the detailed section, however, feeling, vedana, is to be understood as the feeling aggregate, perception, sanya, as the perception aggregate, and volition, contact, and attention, tatana faso manasikaro, as the formations aggregate. While it is certainly the case that other states are included in the formations aggregate, still these three are found in all classes of consciousness, even the weakest. That is why the formations aggregate is here pointed out only by means of these three. The four great elements, Katari, Mahabhutani, This is a designation for the four: earth, water, fire, and air. The reason why these are called great elements and other determinations concerning them are all stated in the Visuddhimagga in the description of the materiality aggregate. Derived from the four great elements, Katunan ka Mahabhutanam Upadaya. Derived from Upadaya, equal sign having clung to Upadayitva. Having grasped is the meaning. Some also say depending upon, Nisaya. And here the reading is completed by adding the word existing, Vatamanam. The Pali uses the genitive in the term for the elements in the sense of a group. Hence the meaning here should be understood thus: the materiality that exists derived from the group of the four great elements. Thus, materiality taken altogether is to be understood as consisting of all the following: the four great elements beginning with the earth element, and the materiality that exists derived from the four great elements stated in the canonical Abhidhamma to be of 23 kinds by analysis into the I base, etc. With the arising of consciousness, Vijnana Samudaya. But here the arising of mentality materiality should be understood to occur with the arising of consciousness according to the method stated in the Visuddhimagga in the description of dependent arising, as to which consciousness is a condition for which mentality, for which materiality, and for which mentality materiality. The rest by the method stated. Consciousness. 58. In the section on consciousness, I consciousness, Kaku Vijnana, is consciousness in the I or consciousness born from the I. So also with ear, nose, tongue, and body consciousness. But with the other one, that is mind consciousness, Mano Vijnana, mind itself is consciousness. This is a designation for the resultant consciousness of the three, mundane, planes of existence except for the two groups of fivefold consciousness. With the arising of formations, Sankhara Samudaya. But here, the arising of consciousness should be understood to occur with the arising of formations according to the method stated in the Visuddhimagga, as to which formation is a condition for which consciousness. Formations. 62. In the section on formations, a formation, sankhara, has the characteristic of forming, abhisankharanalakkhana. But in the detailed section, the bodily formation, kaya sankhara, is a formation that proceeds from the body. This is a designation for the 20 kinds of bodily volition, the 8 sense sphere wholesome and 12 unwholesome that occur by way of activation in the bodily door. The verbal formation, vasisankhara, is a formation that proceeds from speech. This is a designation for the same 20 kinds of verbal volition that occur by way of breaking into speech in the door of speech. The mental formation, citta sankhara, is a formation that proceeds from the mind. This is a designation for the 29 kinds of mental volition, the mundane, wholesome, and unwholesome, that occur in one sitting alone in thought, and which do not cause activation of the bodily and verbal doors. With the arising of ignorance, avijja samudaya. But here ignorance should be understood as a condition for the wholesome by way of decisive support, and for the unwholesome by way of connascence as well. The rest by the method stated. Ignorance. 66. In the section on ignorance, not knowing about suffering, dukkha ajnanam, means not knowing about the truth of suffering. This is a designation for delusion, moha, the same method with respect to not knowing about the origin of suffering, and so on. Herein, not knowing about suffering should be understood in 4 ways, as to containment, antogadato, as to physical basis, vatuto, as to object, aramanato, and as to concealment, paticadanato. Thus, because of being included in the truth of suffering, it, not knowing or ignorance, is contained in suffering, and the truth of suffering is its physical basis by being its support condition, and the truth of suffering is its object by being its object condition, and it conceals the truth of suffering by preventing the penetration of its real characteristic and by not allowing knowledge to occur in regard to it. Not knowing about the origin of suffering should be understood in three ways: as to physical basis, as to object, and as to concealment. And not knowing about cessation and the way to cessation should be understood in one way only, as to concealment. For non-knowledge only conceals cessation and the way by preventing the penetration of their real characteristics and by not allowing knowledge to occur in regard to them. But it is not contained in them because it is not included in this pair of truths. And these two truths are not its physical basis because they are not connascent, nor are they its object because of its non-occurrence on account of them. For the last pair of truths are difficult to see because of their profundity, and non-knowledge, which is blind, does not occur there. But the first pair of truths is profound in the sense of opposition because of the difficulty in seeing the characteristic of their intrinsic nature. It occurs there by way of obsession by the perversions. Furthermore, about suffering, dukkha. To this extent, ignorance is indicated as to inclusion, as to physical basis, as to object, and as to function. About the origin of suffering, dukkha samudaya. To this extent, as to basis, as to object, and as to function. About the cessation of suffering, dukkha nirodha. And about the way leading to the cessation of suffering, dukkha nirodhagaminiya patipadaya. To this extent as to function. But without distinction, in each instance, ignorance is described in terms of its intrinsic nature by the phrase not knowing. With the arising of the taints, asava samudaya. But here the taint of sensual desire and the taint of being are conditions for ignorance by way of connascence, etc. The taint of ignorance only by way of decisive support. And here the ignorance that had arisen previously should be understood as the taint of ignorance. That is a decisive support condition for the ignorance that arises subsequently. The rest by the method stated. The taints. 70. In the section on the taints, with the arising of ignorance, avijja samudaya. Here ignorance is a condition for the taint of sensual desire and the taint of being by way of decisive support, etc. It is a condition for the taint of ignorance only by way of decisive support. And here the ignorance that arises subsequently should be understood as the taint of ignorance. The previously arisen ignorance itself becomes a decisive support condition for the subsequently arisen taint of ignorance. The rest by the aforesaid method. This section is stated by way of showing the condition for the ignorance which heads the factors of dependent arising. Stated thus, the undiscoverability, animatagata, of any beginning of samsara is established. How? Because with the arising of the taints, there is the arising of ignorance, and with the arising of ignorance, there is the arising of the taints. Thus, the taints are a condition for ignorance, and ignorance is a condition for the taints. Having shown this, it follows that no first point of ignorance is manifest, and because none is manifest, the undiscoverability of any beginning of samsara is proven. Conclusion. Thus, in all this Sutta 16 sections have been stated. The section on the courses of Kama, the section on nutriment, the section on suffering, and the sections on aging and death, birth, being, clinging, craving, feeling, contact, the sixfold base, mentality, materiality, consciousness, formations, ignorance, and the taints. As to these, in each individual section there is a twofold analysis, in brief and in detail, amounting to 32 cases. Thus, in this sutta, in these 32 cases, the 4 noble truths are expounded. Among these, in the 16 cases stated in detail, arahantship is expounded. But according to the opinion of the elder, the 4 truths and the 4 paths are expounded in the 32 cases. Thus, in the entire word of the Buddha comprised in the 5 great Nikayas, there is no sutta except for this discourse on right view, where the 4 noble truths are explained 32 times, and where arahantship is explained 32 times. That is what the Venerable Sariputta said, idam avak ayasma Sariputto. The Venerable Sariputta spoke this discourse on right view, having adorned it with 64 divisions, 32 expositions of the 4 truths, and 32 expositions of arahantship. The bhikkhus were satisfied and delighted in the Venerable Sariputta's words. In the Papanchasudani, the commentary to the Majjhima Nikaya, the explanation of the discourse on right view is concluded.